I've said it thousands of times and I will continue to say it. Social media marketing is one of the most beginner-friendly business models out there. I would know because it's how I got my start at this point, 9 years ago? It was the business that really paved the way for the rest of my career. It was the first business I made $10,000 a month with. It was the reason why at the age of 17, I was able to move into my dream apartment. It kind of changed everything. It was the business that finally allowed me to start taking care of my mom and make good on all the promises that I made to her growing up, just those accomplishments that you look back with so much gratitude. And, after doing, relatively well in the rest of my career, and even though it was the business that then led me to go on and have an even much bigger career outside of just social media marketing, it was a thing that started all, and genuinely I would not be in the position I am today if I had not started my social media marketing agency. So with all that being said, that's exactly what I'm going to reveal to you here today. Exactly how to make $10,000 a month with your social media marketing agency this year. Now, one thing that's very interesting about SMA is that it's not just me. There are countless examples of multimillionaires and even billionaires that started their entrepreneurial careers with service-based businesses. In simple terms, they all started using this model. Basically, services for businesses that help them get more eyeballs, more leads, more attention, more sales, more customers, and ultimately make more money. So we have Guillaume, who's a dear friend of mine, founder of Lemless. That's a multi-$100 million software company, and he actually started off with an agency. We have Sam Ovens, founder of School. He started off with an agency. Alex Hermosi, founder of Gym Launch. He actually started off doing the marketing services for gyms before he pivoted and went into coaching. Now, Guillaume, Sam, and Alex are all multi-millionaires. But there's even billionaires who got their start by taking advantage of the same model. Andrew Wilkinson, who has an incredible book, I recommend you guys all read it. He is the founder of Tiny, and he actually started off with an agency. That's the thing that gave him the cash flow to then go on and build his other ventures and his other businesses. Now you must be thinking, why is this model so good? Well, what sets SMA apart from other models like dropshipping, affiliate marketing, Amazon FBA, or trading is really 4 metrics. And rather than telling you, let me just show you. You see, when evaluating a business model, especially as a beginner, and most importantly as a beginner, you always need to look at these 4 metrics: startup capital, profit margin, demand, and fulfillment. You see, the most beginner-friendly models always have the following: low startup capital, high profit margins, high demand, and easy fulfillment. Now, I know that dropshipping is usually the business model the beginners find first, so let's break down dropshipping using these 4 metrics. Startup capital, anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. Listen, for some reason, people don't believe me when I tell them this. And by the way, I own physical product brands. This is my eyewear company. We're on pace to do 8 figures this year. And I either own or invest in multiple other D2C brands. So I know the unit economics behind these businesses very, very well and very, very intimately. You can burn through a lot of ads testing products. So the truth of the matter is, if you are going to start off dropshipping, you need some money to test with ads. And a lot of times those tests just simply don't work. And that's the name of the game when you're starting any business model as a beginner. The truth is, when you're starting as a beginner in any business model, for a month, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year, you might not find success. And that's fine if you're not burning through a cash and bankrupting yourself in the process. Profit margins, anywhere from 10 to 60%. Honestly, I would say even 60% is way too high, including ad costs, chargebacks, refunds, all that stuff. Demand is very low. Dropshipping had its moment, but at the end of the day, dropshipping, it's not a real business. It's not a physical product business. It's not a real direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand. And consumers are smart. They can tell the difference these days. Fulfillment is medium. The headaches are really going to come more on the back end with, high chargebacks, high disputes, dealing with a lot of headaches with customers and your support emails. Now, as you can see, because you need an advertising budget, your startup costs are high. Your profit margins are low after manufacturing and shipping. And because dropshipping products are gimmicks, for the most part, demand is low, or demand is there for a month or two, and then these are very trendy. Most of the time these are very gimmicky products. Okay, it's not something that's long lasting. Now, the fulfillment isn't the hardest, but there's a lot of admin involved due to logistics, refunds, etc. Now, as you can see, dropshipping is not beginner friendly. So let's break down the agency model. Startup capital, to be honest, $50, $100. Really all you need is a domain, a G Suite, and you're pretty much good to go. Profit margins anywhere from 65 to honestly 98%. It could be 99% technically even. The amount of software that you need to really keep this thing going before you get any clients is minimal. Demand is super high when you know how to position things the correct way, because you're genuinely solving problems for businesses. And fulfillment is easy when you do it in the way that I actually teach you to. Now, there's no need to run paid ads or invest into stock, which means that startup capital is insignificant. There aren't really any logistics or product costs, which means the profit margins are always high. All businesses need the services that agencies provide, which keeps demand high at all times. And fulfillment can actually be outsourced, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, or learned very quickly, which means that it is simple and easy. It is undeniable that the agency model is one of the best models for beginners. And in today's video, I'm gonna walk through my 9-step blueprint to scale your agency to $10,000 a month. And listen, you know what the best part of this is? I can pretty much give you all the information from A to Z. As many of you guys know, I have been selling agency programs and various forms of agency coaching for years. But at the end of 2024, I finally closed the doors to my last ever agency program, Agency Accelerator. So listen, quite frankly, I don't have an agency course to sell you here, and I don't offer any agency coaching. So you might be wondering, well, why are you making this video? For the exact reason that I mentioned at the start of this video. SMA truly is one of the best business models to start as a beginner. And my goal for this training is to help as many of you get off to the best start in your entrepreneurial careers as possible. So without further ado, please grab a pen and paper and let's get started. So step number 1 is all about niche selection. In simple terms, what type of businesses do you want to work with? There are thousands of options out there for every person watching this video, and some will suit you better than others. But before we continue, I want to make something very clear. There's no such thing as the best niche. That doesn't exist, okay? You are looking for the most suitable niche for your situation. But you might be wondering, well, why even niche down in the first place? Many of you might be thinking, well, if you can work with any business, well, then you're likely to get more clients because of it. Well, really, it comes down to 2 main reasons: specialization and scalability. So let's use a practical example here. Let's compare a brain surgeon and a general practitioner. Now, yeah, sure, they're both doctors, but if you had a problem impacting your brain, who would you trust to solve this problem for you? Well, the obvious answer is the brain surgeon. Why? Because he is a specialist in that field, and people always gravitate towards specialists over generalists. It really just comes down to trust. So, staying with this example, who can charge more for their services? The specialist brain surgeon or the general practitioner? Well, obviously the answer should be obvious. Specialists can always charge more because they solve a niche problem for a certain type of person or business. So when you are positioned as an expert, you become an authority in a space, and this really allows you to charge more for your service. And that brings us on to our next topic. You see, scalability. When you're first starting out, you are looking to make your first $10,000, which means you only need a few clients, but that doesn't mean that you should ignore the future. You want to position yourself in a way where you can scale to $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 a month with your agency. And niching down helps you do exactly this. You see, niching down decreases complexity. And I tried to make this very obvious for you. When you have one niche, everything is streamlined, everything works in unison. It's truly like having one business. But when you have multiple niches, it's like you have to communicate in a different way to every single different type of client. The way in one niche, the best way to get clients is very different to the other niche, because on one niche, your potential clients might be spending a lot of time on Instagram DMs, whereas in another niche, they don't check Instagram at all. On one niche, they're hanging out on LinkedIn. On another niche, they don't hang out at all. And then even once you actually get the client through the door, delivering on your service, it becomes a nightmare, because each new client, you have to go back to the drawing board and go, okay, how are we gonna make it work for this kind of industry? Okay, how do we change the campaigns or the structures or the copywriting? It's almost just like having multiple businesses, and that's the honest truth of it. When every client is different, every aspect requires variation. Increased variation in your business results in increased complexity, and increased complexity hinders your ability to scale. So let's take a look at an actual example. A good friend of mine, John, scaled his agency to over $150,000 a month, and he exclusively worked with real estate agents. And he actually had over 100 clients at once at the peak of his agency. Now, the reason John was able to scale to this level and work with this many clients at once is because he kept complexity low. He was able to find prospects, reach out to prospects, close clients, and deliver his service to clients in almost the exact same way every time. Now think about it. If John had worked with every niche under the sun, he would never have been able to acquire and handle the number of clients he did while keeping his profit margins under control. As I said before, there are thousands of niches. So how do you pick the one that is right for you? Well, there are really a few different indicators that you need to ensure your niche checks out on. First things first, revenue and profit. If a business isn't making at least $15,000 a month in profit, it is unlikely that they will part with $2,000 a month because it feels like a very large investment to them. If they're making $50,000 a month, paying you $2,000 is a pretty insignificant investment for a business of that size. Next, we have to look at their product ticket. You see, it's always better to approach businesses that sell expensive products because it requires less deals for them to make a return on their investment. So let's take a look at a very tangible example. If you're working with a coffee shop, okay, and you charge them $2,000 a month and they make $2 profit per coffee they sell, you need to help them sell 1,000 extra cups of coffee to even just break even on their investment. On the other hand, if you're working with a roofing business, they make $10,000 profit per job. So if you get them one new job a month, they've instantly made a 5x return on their investment if they're paying you $2,000 a month. And it is always easier to convince a prospect that you can make them one extra sale per month compared to saying, oh yeah, I'll bring you in an extra 1,000 sales a month. Next is growth and stability. You see, you want to work with your niche long term, so it's quite wise to avoid dying industries to ensure the sustainability of your own business. I mean, think about it like this. Would you rather work with newspaper printers or info businesses? Newspapers are dying due to the rise of online news sources, whereas the info market is rapidly growing. Next, let's look at market size. The number of businesses in your niche is very important because the more businesses there are, the more opportunities exist. Home renovations is a massive niche that has millions of businesses in it. So by targeting a large market, it is very easy to find and pick out at least a few clients. Whereas Asian themed wedding dress designers are much rare. I mean, think about it. How many businesses do you know of in that space, if any? You would need to approach and close almost every prospect with a 100% success rate to scrape $10,000 a month. Next is competitive advantage. You see, it's always good to choose a niche where you have a competitive advantage that sets you apart from the rest. Now listen, you may not realize it right now, but there are niches where you have a propensity or you actually have an edge compared to everyone else. You know, you may have worked in your niche for a period of time, which gives you the ability to understand their business and also speak their language. Now you might come from a family that is very involved in a particular niche, and this often comes with a list of people in your circle who already own businesses that you are trying to help. Your advantage is having more warm leads than someone who has no connection in that niche. Now, next is sophistication level. So sophistication level basically refers to the amount of knowledge and skill that prospects, so potential clients in your niche, have about what it is that you're selling. Let's use an example. Imagine you're a beginner and your plan is to start an advertising agency. Which of these two niches would be easier to sell to? E-commerce businesses or real estate agents? You see, pretty much most e-commerce business owners have been running their own ads for months, if not years at that point. This means that they understand the service, which means that their need for your service is lower, but they also need someone better than what they are currently. Now, is that something you can promise and fulfill on as a beginner? Well, let's take the real estate agent on the other hand. They sell homes for a living, so it's very unlikely that they have ever run ads in their life. Even as a beginner, you already know more than them. You're already more entrenched, or if you're not right now, if you're truly starting from zero, I can tell you honestly, if you spend 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, really head down, studying everything there is to know about getting leads for real estate agents, you're already going to be at level 3 and they're at level 1. So you already know more than they do. So really the difference here is between sophisticated and unsophisticated niches. As a beginner, you're always better off selling your services to unsophisticated niches because this allows you to be the expert in the room and gives you the opportunity to bring value even if you aren't the best in the world at your service. Level 1, unsophisticated. I want to make sure I leave you with some options, so let me list a few examples of some social media marketing niches. Now, I want you to use this key, this color-coded key, to determine whether it's a suitable niche for your level. So red is advanced, orange is intermediate, and green is beginner. So some advanced options: SaaS, aka software, law firms, cybersecurity, fintech, e-commerce. Some intermediate options: solar, accountants, chiropractors, med spas, real estate, car detailers. Beginner: HVAC, pest control, roofing, painters, pool installation, landscapers. Once again, please feel free to pause and take a screenshot here. So hopefully that gets your mind ticking over at some different niche options. Now, moving on, service selection. Once you have your niche locked in, the next step is service selection. If you don't have a service, you have nothing to sell. You see, the biggest problem that new agency owners face during this phase is analysis paralysis. Really, the reason for this is the sheer number of service options, and if you don't have a roadmap to find the right service for your agency, you will get stuck. But first, let's take a look at the two types of services you can offer. You have convenience offers, which is basically services that save time, or you have return on investment offers, which are services that basically make money. Now, just so you understand, return on investment services are usually easier to sell because the business sees it as an upfront investment for monetary gain later. For example, lead generation. Now, convenience services are not a bad option. Time is money. So if you can save a business time and resources by doing a service that they don't have time for, they are able to focus on money-making activities. An example of this is video editing. So let's take a look at a few services you can provide as an agency. Convenience, you have social media management, videography, video editing, reputation management, web design for return on investment services. You've got paid traffic, email marketing, copywriting, SEO, lead generation. Going back a step, do you remember how I told you it is easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis? This is why. These are just a few of the services you can provide as an agency. But to avoid getting stuck in a state of analysis paralysis, you really need to start with two simple questions. What is the biggest problems businesses in my niche face? And what is the most efficient way of solving that problem? So let's take a practical example. Imagine you've chosen roofing as your niche and you're trying to understand what their biggest problem is. It is unlikely that you will know the answer straight away. So you need to do research to understand what your niche's biggest problem is. And you want to make sure you do your research by speaking to business owners and doing online research. And knowing what problem you're trying to solve is the key to finding the right service. Now, once you do your research and you understand the problem, you are already halfway there. Now that you've done your research, you actually discover that their biggest problem is that they aren't at client capacity. So what is the solution? They need more clients. And now you ask yourself the big question: what service can you provide that brings them more clients and helps them operate at full capacity? The thing is, there's more than one answer to this question. In this example, all of these things could work: SEO, paid traffic, email marketing. And this is why you need to have a few considerations before choosing your service. First is skill set, scalability, upfront costs, as well as income variation. And I'm gonna break these down, don't worry. Skill set. If you have the skills to deliver the service yourself, this should always be a consideration when choosing your service. And that's actually why I started my agency as a creative agency. Not only did I have a love for content, I was good at creating it. My background is actually in photo and video. So if you already have a skill that would serve your future clients, you would be crazy not to utilize it. And if you don't have any of these skills, don't worry. I'm gonna show you how to actually overcome that later in the training. Next is scalability. You see, different services have different levels of scalability. That is just the truth of it. And it usually comes down to one key variable, which is location. This is part of the reason why I switched from a creative agency to an advertising agency. When your service requires you to be in a certain location, the number of clients that you can handle decreases significantly. You see, when paid traffic is your service, you can manage a huge number of ad accounts because you're doing it from the comfort of your own home or your own office. If you're doing videography as your service, you can only work with one client at a time because you can't be in two places at once. The next consideration is upfront costs. You see, when it comes to the agency business model, it is one of the business models that doesn't require much, if any, capital investment. The model really requires sweat equity, basically effort. Unfortunately, the service you pick can have an impact on that. So let's compare two services right here: videography and copywriting. If you want to compete with other creative agencies specializing in videography, you're going to need equipment. You're going to need a quality camera with various lenses, microphones, attachments, etc. This equipment will run you thousands of dollars before you even get to close a client. Copywriting is a totally different story. As long as you have a laptop with an internet connection, you can start a copywriting agency. The upfront cost is next to nothing. So if you are a beginner, always try to keep your upfront costs as low as humanly possible. Next thing to discuss is income variation. You see, different services tend to have different payment structures. There's usually two different types of deals. You've got project-based and you have recurring. Project-based payments usually take the form of one large lump sum payment for a project. For example, $8,000 for a website build. Recurring payments is when you get paid a monthly fee over a pre-agreed term. For example, $2,000 a month for 6 months to provide paid traffic services. Now, to make things clear, one isn't necessarily better than the other, but you do need to ask yourself whether you want the stability the recurring services gives you, or whether you are fine with your income always being different because you're working with these project-based clients. So quick actionable recap: you want to identify your niche's biggest problem, you want to understand the solution, you want to identify the services that can solve the problem and provide the solution, and you want to scrutinize your service options using the 4 considerations, and voila, you can lock in your service. And this is where we move to step number 3, which is agency setup. Now, at this point, you have your niche and your service locked in, but it is time to turn your idea into a real business. And the first thing you're going to need is an agency name. Now, please do not overthink this. My agency was called IAG Media, and honestly, it wasn't creative at all. IAG was just my initials, and the word media didn't even make sense because literally within 1 year, I turned into an advertising agency. So IAG Advertising would have made more sense than IAG Media, but alas, it just doesn't matter, quite frankly. I mean, the fact that I was still making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year with a name like IAG Media proves that the name just doesn't really matter that much, okay? And if you're really stuck, give Namelix a try. It will generate different names for you, and you can just pick one that you like. Next up, you're gonna need to buy a domain. Your domain will allow you to create a professional email and host your website. Now, you can buy domains through multiple platforms, but I recommend going with Namecheap. So I just want to say a big thank you to, no, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna leave an affiliate link either. Just go look them up on Google or something. Now, quick word of warning that some domains can be very expensive, but in your case, it doesn't have to be. You see, if you search your agency name and it is very expensive, either just pick a new name or buy a variation that is cheaper. So always try and buy a .com or .io domain. Avoid weird and outdated ones like .edu or even .org. Who even uses .org anymore? Anyway, so once you have your name and domain, it is time to create a logo. Once again, please do not waste a ton of time on this. Look at how simple my logo was. I can tell you right now that a nice logo will not be the difference between your agency failing or succeeding, okay? So to make your logo, you can use a platform like Canva. No need for the Pro version unless there is a design that you really want. But if that's the case, Canva Pro is just a few dollars a month. Now, the next one is a pretty easy one. I want you to clean up your personal social media. You can set up agency pages on platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, but to be honest, that isn't really too important. All you need to do is go to your personal profiles and just clean them up. No pictures of you shotgunning beers and looking messy or crazy partying or anything like that. It will become apparent later in this video why this is important, but ultimately you are a business owner now and the world needs to see that. You don't need to do anything crazy and act like someone you're not. I mean, just look at my Instagram profile. My Instagram profile is just random slideshows of my life. And that's the other thing. You don't need to be super corporate or super professional or like, just be a normal human being. But also there's certain things like, listen, I have photos from trips and funny photos and funny videos of my friends. Of course, those things not everything needs to be posted on Instagram, okay? So am I saying that you need to be some corporate-y, super professional, everything needs to be super professional? No, people like dealing with other people, okay? So please don't be some corporate-y robot, but also like you don't need to post videos of you partying in Cabo with your friends. People want to do business with people who ooze authority, and the way you portray yourself on social media, quite frankly, is what people will see and is the first impression they have of you. So if a business owner saw your social media today, you have to ask yourself, would they want to work with me based on what they see? Now it is time to set up your Google Workspace to get your professional email created. Google Workspace is really good because it allows you to store pitch decks, data sheets, documents, and your email account all under one Google Workspace using apps like Google Slides, Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Gmail. A small detail that has a lot of impact is being able to create a professional email account through Google Workspace once you bought your domain. So instead of being john@gmail.com, now you're john@youragency.com, okay? So now that you have your professional email set up, you need to warm up your email. Email warm up is something that a lot of people forget about, okay? New email accounts have low deliverability, which means that most emails will go to spam if volume increases. So just so you understand, email warm up is the process of increasing the deliverability of an email account. Some people try to do this manually, but I suggest a software called Lemwarm. This is actually gonna warm up your email account, so that way when you do reach out to prospects and you do reach out to potential clients, you're not gonna end up in spam. You're only gonna start using your email at high volume later, but the warm up process does take about 3 to 4 weeks, so it's better to get it done as soon as humanly possible. Now, at this point, you have almost everything you need to get started with your agency, but one nice to have is an agency website. From what I can remember, I was making close to $20,000 a month if not even more, before I ever even created an agency website. People love to place a lot of importance on this step, but to me, it really isn't that big of a deal. Now, luckily, it is easier than ever to create websites. Now, all of the users inside of Agency Accelerator just use one of my software companies. It's called Flowzy. You see, Flowzy has a custom website builder that also has multiple functions that you will need as an agency owner. So everything from file management, communication, note management, CRM, proposals, invoicing, task management, calendar. It has all of those things under one hub. Just so you're aware, that's one of my software companies. It does all that, even all the way down to onboarding, funnel, it's literally one powerhouse for running your agency. But to be honest, you can use anything you want. I'm really not trying to turn this into a promotion for Flowzy. You can use whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now, a couple other additional softwares. Stripe is the most commonly used payment processor in the online space. Now, unfortunately, it's not available in every country, so Payoneer is a really good alternative. Zoom is the best meeting hosting software out there, in my opinion. You don't need to get the pro version from the start. Upgrade to pro once you start booking sales calls, because the free version actually has a limit of 45 minutes. And that's a little embarrassing if you're on a call with the potential clients and they see the 5 minutes left in this meeting. So, you don't need to pay for it straight away, but once you start booking meetings in with potential clients, then yeah, it makes sense to upgrade to the pro. Or Google Meet is another option, and Google Meet is entirely free, but just, I don't know, me personally, I've always preferred Zoom. That's just a me thing. Now, at this point, you're basically ready to start making money. You know what types of businesses you're targeting. You know what service you're going to offer. You have your agency fully set up, but what you don't know yet is how you're going to package what you're selling, and you don't know what you are going to charge. And that is what you need to focus on right now. Offer creation. An offer is the following: your niche plus your service plus your pricing model, those three variables, and then how you package it. Because listen, two different agency owners can have very different offers. Even though their niche, service, and pricing model is the same, the way that they package it will totally change the perception of the offer, okay? But before you can create your offer, you need to understand the goal of your offer. The goal of your offer is to bridge the gap for your prospects. Every prospect has a current state and a desired state. The current state is when they have an unsolved problem, and the desired state is when their problem has been solved. You see, the gap lies between these two states, and your offer is there to help them bridge that gap. Your offer needs to take your prospect from the current state to the desired state. So, how to create an offer? There are 5 components to an offer. The promise: this lays out the exact results you're going to achieve with your service. It usually includes a tangible result and a time frame. For example, 30 qualified booked appointments in 90 days, or 4 long-form YouTube videos in 60 days. Next, you have the methodology. The methodology briefly explains the steps that you will take to solve their problem. The key word is brief. You don't need to include every intricate step involved in the service delivery process. For example, we run social media ads to your specific target market. Leads click on the ads, which prompts them to complete a form. If they are qualified based on their form submission, our team books them directly into your calendar. Pricing model. You see, there are various different pricing models that you can use when running an agency. Now, let's take a look at a few that I would recommend. Monthly retainer, simple enough. This is a set amount per month. Pay per project, so once off lump sum. Pay per lead, set amount per lead, or percentage of ROAS, which is basically a set percentage. ROAS means a return on ad spend, okay? So whatever you've brought them in from the ads minus the cost of the ads, the delta, the difference between that is your return on ad spend, and then you just take a percentage of that. Now, a setup fee can also be charged on all these models except for the pay per project, and a setup fee is an upfront cost that is charged in some cases. Now, when it comes to setting a price on your offer, this differs depending on the value that you bring. The more money you can make your clients, obviously the more that you can charge. So do some research on what other agencies are charging. To start with, charge a price that you are comfortable with, that aligns with others in the market, and maybe even undercut them slightly, and see how the market reacts and adjust accordingly. If every prospect jumps at the opportunity with no pushback, well, then increase the price to test. But if every prospect thinks the price is too high, then decrease the price and test the response. Next is contract duration. If you are running a service that charges recurringly every month, you need to set how long the contract runs for. This doesn't mean that the client leaves at the end of the contract. It just means terms will be renegotiated at the end of each contract cycle. Of course, there'll be times where you're gonna have to part ways with certain clients. That's just the name of the game, but you do have to have a set minimum term, really, to protect yourself as well. I suggest contract lengths to exceed 90 days at all times, okay? So 3-month minimum at all times, because this allows enough time to optimize your service and get good results. Now, some other things that you can offer: free website, audits, value resources, lead reactivation. These are really some things that you can do to go the extra mile with your clients. Next thing I want to talk about is guarantees. You see, I know the industry is obsessed with guarantees, but I am generally not a fan of them. They often do more bad than good, and it really makes your clients doubt your service quality if you are begging for business using guarantees. The only guarantee I would use in difficult negotiations is the pro rata guarantee, and I'll explain what this means. Let's say you're promising 20 appointments for $2,000. Each appointment in that case is worth $100. So if you only book 18 appointments, in my opinion, at least, you shouldn't refund the full amount like you would in those crazy money back guarantees. Instead, you refund $200 for the 2 appointments you didn't manage to book. In that case, you fell short of the goal by 10%. So you're going to refund 10%. You fell short of the goal by 2 leads. So those 2 leads you missed out on, you refund. Okay. So that's known as a pro rata guarantee. And in my opinion, that's fair. Now, you don't always need to offer a guarantee, but you can use it as a fallback during hard negotiations. Step number 5, prospecting. You see, at this stage, you are finally ready to start searching for clients. And this starts with prospecting. Prospecting is the process of identifying and listing businesses in your niche with their contact details before you start reaching out to them. You see, the contact deals you'll be looking for are based on the outreach methods you'll be using, but always try to get as much information as possible. Ideally, you want to have name, location, email, number, as well as social media. Now, there are really a few main prospecting methods: manual, software, lead generators. So let's start off with manual prospecting. Manual prospecting is when you manually search for prospects online. And there are various ways of doing this, which I'm going to share in a moment. But something you must keep in mind when diving into these 3 prospecting methods is that each of them has pros and cons. You see, because you are physically searching for each prospect, the quality of the information is going to be high. That being said, it's also a long and tedious process. Despite that, it is free and it's a great way to get started. So let's look at a few of these examples. For local businesses, you have Google Maps. For blue collar businesses, you have Checkatrade. For real estate agents, you have Zillow. For corporate professionals, you have LinkedIn. Now, these are just a few examples, but there will be similar options in any location that you are targeting. Next, we move on to prospecting softwares. Now, prospecting softwares is one of the most efficient ways to build huge prospecting lists. These softwares allow you to pull prospect lists directly through the software, and these lists can be based on criteria like niche, business size, location, and a few others. Prospecting softwares are fast, but unfortunately, the quality isn't always the best. Now, these softwares are pretty inexpensive as well. Despite the drop in quality, the trade-off is worth it because of the sheer amount of prospects you can generate for the price and considering how automated it is. So here's just a few of the softwares that you can use: Apollo, LeadSwift, LeadGorilla, as well as Clay. Next, we move on to lead generators. The most advanced strategy you can use for building prospect lists is hiring lead generators. These are essentially contractors that build prospecting lists for you. As you can imagine, this is the most expensive method, but it requires no work on your end, and it's usually very fast. So there are 2 platforms where you can hire lead generators. You have Upwork as well as Fiverr. Now, word of warning, some of these contractors are better than others, so don't buy a huge prospect list straight away. Instead, buy a smaller, cheaper list, test it out. If it's good, buy a bigger, more expensive list to reduce your cost per prospect, okay? And that brings us on to step number 6, outreach. Once you have a list of prospects together, it is time to start outreach. Outreach is the process of working through a list of prospects and contacting them with the intention of booking a sales call. It is important that you understand this. During outreach, you aren't selling your service. You are just giving enough information to stimulate enough interest for a prospect to agree to a sales call. You are ultimately pitching the meeting, and this all starts with outreach preparation. So, choose your outreach method. There are really 3 cold outreach methods I suggest exploring: cold calling, cold emailing, and cold DM. Now, you don't have to choose one. You can use a combination of methods. The most important aspect of deciding on your outreach methods is matching outreach methods with your niche. And let me explain what I mean by this. If you are targeting home renovation businesses, you have to remember that the nature of their work is that they're on the move, driving from job to job. They don't sit in an office on their desk all day, okay? And that is exactly why cold calling will generally have much higher success rates than cold email in the home renovation niche. But now, if you were to change the niche from home renovation to SaaS, the opposite might be true because SaaS companies are very active on email. So whatever niche you've picked, think logically. Which method are you most likely to get a response with? And next, we move on to scripting your outreach messages. When doing outreach, there must be some intention behind messages you send. They can't just be random, okay? So I suggest pre-scripting your messages and having a general frame for cold calls. There are really 3 aspects you need in an outreach message: highlight pain points, emotional buy-in, as well as no-brainer offer. So let's talk about highlighting pain points. You want to make them aware of the problem they're facing. When it comes to emotional buy-in, you want to point out the result of their pain points being a thing of the past. Now, when it comes to no-brainer offer, you want to offer the meeting and throw in a bonus that sweetens the deal. For example, free resources, free SOPs, free templates that you can just give them and they can install straight into their business. Next is outreach volume. Now, this is the point where I'm going to tell you things that you don't necessarily want to hear. Outreach is a numbers game. You have to send outreach messages and make cold calls every single day, and you must be consistent. I'm just giving you the unfiltered truth here, okay? And here's some outreach thresholds per month. Bronze tier, 2,000 outreaches a month. Silver tier, 3,000 outreaches a month. Gold tier, 4,000 outreaches a month. If you want to be signing clients regularly, these are the sort of outreach numbers that you must hit, especially at the beginning because you don't have credibility yet. So why is volume so important? The more outreach you do, the more likely you are to get a yes. And as you do more outreach, you start to change small parts of your strategy, whether it's the method you use or the copy that you write. The more you do, the more accurate the data will be. This gives you a clear picture of what's working and what isn't. So I want to talk to you guys about some advanced client acquisition. As you can probably tell at this point, prospecting and outreach is tedious and hard. And I get it. Going to a prospect who has no idea who you even are, it's just awkward. But what if I told you that there's a better way? Instead of reaching out to prospects, what if they reached out to you? And that is exactly how I got clients when I was running my own agency, IAG Media. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I actually used to turn down 90% of the businesses that wanted to work with my agency because I had more clients than I could handle. And no, I wasn't running ads or sending cold outreach messages. Instead, I did this using the same asset I use to this day to drive traffic to all of my businesses. I was using my personal brand. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, easy for you to say. You have 5 million subscribers on your main YouTube channel, but you got to remember, I started my agency in 2016 and I ran it for 6 years up until 2022. And it was really actually only after I closed my agency that my social media really started blowing up 3 years ago. In the early stages, I had something called a micro personal brand. A micro personal brand is when you have a relatively small audience of just a few thousand people, but every person that follows you is interested in what you are sharing and ultimately what you have to sell. And that's actually what I do right now. Earlier this year, I started a company called Monetize, and inside Monetize, the team and I help our users to build micro personal brands to turbocharge their businesses. Now, unfortunately, at least at the time of recording this, Monetize has closed enrollments for the next few months, but because I want to make sure your agency journey is as easy as possible, I'm going to do you a solid. If you DM me personal brand on my Instagram, I'm going to see if you're serious and whether you're a good fit. If so, I will consider making you an offer to join and actually reopen a couple spaces for Monetize. Who knows, I might even throw in a special little bonus for you, but just go ahead and DM me and we will see. To make things clear, Monetize is not free and it's not cheap, but if you want the absolute easiest way to sign clients for your agency and make sure that you never have to go out and chase clients, that they come to you, Monetize is the most powerful tool on earth for you to use in order to make that happen. So I'll go ahead and leave my Instagram link in the description. Just shoot me a DM. If it makes sense, it makes sense. Anyways, that is where we move on to step number 7, sales. You see, once your outreach starts hitting or your personal brand is performing, your calendar should start filling up with meetings. Now it is time to start selling. So to prepare for your sales calls, make sure you do the following: upgrade to Zoom Pro. Make sure your background looks professional, so either a clean white wall or office background. Make sure you don't have your bed in the background, no untidiness, and also make sure you have fast, stable Wi-Fi connection. Once you've done those steps, you are ready to start taking sales calls. So let's look at the structure of a sales call. You have rapport, pre-frame, discovery, transition, and pitch. Now, the rapport really just makes up the first 2 or 3 minutes of a sales call. This is the part of the call where you start to get to know the person you're speaking to. The reason rapport is important is because it just eases the prospect into a sales call. It's also a bit of an icebreaker. When you start a sales call without any form of rapport, it's kind of just awkward. Then you move on to pre-frame. Once you feel like you've done enough rapport building, then you actually ask for permission to proceed. A simple line like this works fine. Well, it's been great to get to know you, but you jumped on this call for a reason today. Is it all good if we hop into business? Now, once they give you the nod, you proceed into pre-frame. Pre-frame is when you lay out how the call is going to go, and this is your opportunity to really set the tone and position yourself as an authority on the call. For example, so let me break down how today's call will work. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your business, and all I ask for is transparency. Me understanding the full picture is really the only way I'm going to be able to know whether we can help you or not. And if I truly believe we can help you, I'm going to make you an offer. But if we can't, I'm going to do my best to connect you with someone who can. Does that sound fair enough to you? If you are able to say this with confidence, even if it's your first time, okay, the prospect is gonna know, or at least they're gonna feel like this isn't your first rodeo, and they're gonna allow you to lead the call. If you don't have a good pre-frame, many prospects will take over the call, interrupt you, and really just pull the call into a different direction than you would want. And this can lead to a lost sale. Then you move into discovery. Now, discovery is the most important part of a sales call. I want you to think about it as a puzzle. Your goal is to get as much information as possible while you are making them realize that they have a big problem that they need to fix, and the solution is sitting right in front of them. Now, there are really 5 parts in discovery, and you need to understand each part in order to make them realize that they need your service. Now, part 1 is current state. Your goal here is to understand where their business is at and what their current financial position is. Ask questions like, how many clients do you get on average per month? How much profit do you make per client? How many clients could you even handle right now? What are you doing right now to solve this problem? You need to understand their exact position right now and what they are doing to improve their situation. Then you move on to part 2, which is the future state. Here is when you start to understand what their goals are in the next few months. And it's always best to keep these linked to finances. Ask questions like, how much profit do you want to be making in 6 months? How many extra clients would you need each month? What would life look like if you were to achieve these goals? When you understand where they are at the moment and where they want to get to, now you can move on to the next part. Part 3 is the gap. Once you understand the gap, this is really where you can start putting on the pressure. You can start breaking down the numbers and start discussing how many more clients and how much more profit they will need per month to hit their goals. And you can start identifying gaps in their current strategy to solve their problems. You can even ask them, if they never jumped on this call, what concrete plan do they have to solve this problem? You see, many business owners don't have a concrete plan, okay? And just by asking this alone, they really start to understand, wow, like I don't have a game plan. I'm saying I want all these things. I want this future. But when you gently highlight the fact that, hey, without me, like what is your game plan? And 99% of the time, they don't have one. And that is where you move on to part 4, which is opportunity cost. During this stage of discovery, you start pushing their pain points, asking questions like, where would you be today if you had a solution 6 months ago? Where will you be in 6 months if you don't find a solution to this problem? You see, pressuring on these pain points just makes prospects answer these questions out loud, leading to a higher problem awareness and prompting them to search for the solution as quickly as possible. And that brings us on to part 5, which is doubt. The last part of your discovery call is all about objection prevention. You need to identify any doubts the prospect has that they haven't shared with you yet. You want to ask questions like, why have you never tried a solution like ours before? If they have worked with another agency, what went wrong? And at this point, you should have everything you need to move into the transition and then into the pitch. So the transition is essentially the setup for the pitch. You can start by giving a brief summary of everything you have learned during discovery. Now, after this brief summary, just ask the prospect if there's anything you've missed and ask for any information the prospect feels like you should know. Now you give the prospect 2 options. Where would you like to go from here? I can either answer any other questions you may have, or I can give you a breakdown of how we can help you. What would you prefer? Now, the prospect will ask for the breakdown 99% of the time, which is basically your cue to get into the pitch. Now, to manage any possible objections, I would slip in one more question called the out of this world frame. And here's basically how it goes. Perfect. And out of curiosity, if I break everything down and it makes sense how we're able to help you, would it be completely out of this world for you to get started today? This frame just weeds out any financial objections that the client may have, because they're logical and they understand that, before you pitch or before you tell them the price, they're like, well, yeah, if you have the solution to my problem, no, it's not out of this world that we can move forward today. Then we move on to the pitch. Now, the pitch is essentially where you break down your methodology in a bit more detail. Give the detail you need to give, but ensure it's easy to understand. Remember that many prospects aren't marketing or content experts, so speak their language. If you don't speak in your prospect's language, you will leave them confused. And remember, confused buyers never buy. Now, throughout the pitch, continue to get verbal agreements by saying lines like, does that make sense? And of course, they're going to affirm and say yes. Now, once you finish your pitch, let the prospect progress that sale by asking, so where would you like to go from here? And that will naturally lead them to ask for the price, which prompts you to break down your offer. And if it makes sense for both parties, voila, you close the deal. Then we move on to step 8, which is onboarding. The next step starts the second the deal is agreed, and that is onboarding. Onboarding is simply the process of collecting payment, getting all the information you need, and granting your new client access to everything they'll need throughout the course of the contract. If you want to make a good first impression, I always suggest sending a new client an onboarding gift. It doesn't have to be expensive, just something they like. Onboarding really comes in two forms: manual onboarding and onboarding funnels. Manual onboarding is simply the process of organizing Zoom meetings with clients to get everything you need from them and give them access to everything they need. In some cases, manual onboarding is also done via email or WhatsApp. Now, I don't recommend manual onboarding. It is slow and takes unnecessary time out of your day as well as your client's day. Simply, in today's day and age, you're gonna look like an amateur if you use this method. So stick to onboarding funnels. Now, an onboarding funnel comes in the form of a link that takes a new client straight to the start of a funnel. Each step in the funnel will prompt the client to take some form of action. And if you really want to impress, make a video for each page in the funnel. The best order for your onboarding funnel is as follows: contract and payment. On this page, your contract will be there for the client to download, read, and e-sign. In the early stages, the contract isn't too important. It's really just there for professionalism purposes. It just states the payment terms, the contract length, and any relevant information. There's also going to be an invoice for the first payment on this page, and this should always be done at the end of each sales call. Once you receive payment, ask for your client to continue through the rest of the onboarding in their own time. You now end the call and officially have a client. Below, add a button that links to the next page named Welcome. Now, the welcome video is a pre-recorded video of you welcoming them as a client. So feel free to talk about your company mission and values. If you have some past results, build up hype and add them into the video. It is important to set expectations and give your client a clear idea of the road ahead. Below the video, add a button called Get Access and prompt the client to click on that at the end of the welcome video. Now, this step is where they're going to get access to their client space and everything else they need. Flozy has a dedicated client space to which they will get access to after they complete the form. Now, I personally suggest filming a Loom showing your client how to navigate their client space, which they will see right after the step. Now, the final step in the onboarding funnel is booking a strategy call with your new client. This session is going to be used to discuss anything you still need after the onboarding process. As the name suggests, the strategy for the next few months will be discussed on this call as well. Now, Flozy actually has a book a call feature that connects with your calendar, giving the client freedom to book a call when it works for them, as well as a time that works for you. And that is where we move on to step number 9, which is service delivery and hiring. You see, now that you finally know how to get clients and get them onboarded, now you have to deliver on the promise you made them. And this is where the service delivery comes in. Earlier in this training, I showed you just a few of the services you can provide as an agency, but you need to understand there are many, many more. The problem with this is that all of you will choose different services, and that means I can't show you how to deliver every single service because this training would be weeks and weeks long. What I can show you is what I did personally. As many of you know, I started by running a creative agency, but I needed to transition into an advertising agency to align with my goals at the time. I had one problem though. I was a content expert, not an ads expert at that time. So what did I do? I actually hired someone that could run the ads for me while I handled the things that I was good at. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, you don't have the money to hire an expert right now. And let me explain the beauty of the system. This is why the agency model is so good. You get paid up front and then you pay your team later. So the client, it's just normal in agency work. The client will pay you at the start of the month. The client always pays up front, but everyone knows salaries and team and contractors, all that stuff, they get paid at the end of the month. This means that you never have cash flow issues. You always stay profitable. Now you might be wondering, if you're getting paid $2,000 per month per client, why would an expert be willing to work for $500 per client? It is simply based on location. There are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of skilled experts living in countries like Brazil, South Africa, Serbia, just to name a few. Now, despite their skills, these individuals won't be able to make the money that you're able to pay locally. So for them, $500 per client per month is an incredible salary. If you get 5 clients, they make $2,500 a month, a salary that in their country means that they are balling out. And this is what I call contractor arbitrage. You are essentially a middleman. Now, I was able to find my first contractor in a Facebook group, but there are various different places that you can look. Facebook groups, Discord, Fiverr, Upwork. Do your best to find a couple options and run an interview process just like any other business would. This is the easiest to do on Upwork and Fiverr because you are able to make job posts looking for specific roles, which means that you will have multiple options. Now, please also still remember, getting a contractor doesn't mean you don't have to know anything about service delivery. Make sure that you still understand the basics of the service that you're offering, because this really allows you to be more confident when you sell, identify talent during the hiring process, as well as manage your team more effectively. And there it is, every step that I would take to start and scale my agency to $10,000 a month in 2025 and beyond. This business model truly has to be one of the lowest barrier to entry of any model. It changed my life entirely, and there's no reason it can't change yours. And a final reminder to DM me Personal Brand on Instagram. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in implementing my micro personal brand strategy by using Monetize. Like I said, at the moment enrollments are closed, but I'm going to reopen the door to a couple individuals who are serious about getting to $10,000 a month in 2025 and beyond. So if that's you, shoot me a message on Instagram. I hope this training has been valuable to you. And as always, I'm watching from afar and I'm rooting for you.